Welcome to the American Mind. Thank you, Angelo, for joining us. Your recent celebrated book was called The Ruling Class: How They Corrupted America and What We Can Do About It. What is more shocking or concerning, that a democracy has a ruling class or that our ruling class is defective by your sights?
Democracy, of course, should not have a ruling class. It always has prominent people, but it shouldn't have people who conceive of themselves as different and who have disdain for those below them, for those they rule. After all, the point of any democracy, and our democracy has made that point best, is that all men are created equal. And because of that, they have equal rights. Now, some will be, of course, more prominent than others, wealthier than others, but they ultimately ought to have the same regard for one another. What is distinctive of ruling classes is that they disdain those below them, and our ruling class became a ruling class not when some people became wealthier than others or more prominent, but when they developed a disdain for those below them and embodied that disdain in government.
So every society has a ruling class, from your point of view?
No.
Including democracies?
No. Every society has some people who are more prominent than others, but only non-democratic states, including the European Union, has a class which is self-contained, self-referential, and has disdain for those below them.
And who is the American ruling class?
Well, the American ruling class is characterized not so much by wealth and position, but by a focus on government, focus from which they derive not only power, but also personal sustenance, and again, above all, by their attitude toward their inferiors. For example, Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, elected by very large majorities twice. In one case, it was 46 states that he won. And I recall that when he delivered a pretty strong speech with regard to the Soviet Union, saying that it was an evil empire, that it was a sad chapter in human history, the last pages of which were about to be written. Stroop Talbot wrote in Time magazine that those were his personal views and did not represent the views of the U.S. government.
Is that right?
The President of the United States did not.
Yeah.
And furthermore, he was correct. Stroop Talbot was correct. Ronald Reagan did not represent the views of his government.
So it's not power, so to speak. It's not office holding. What is it then that makes you a member of the
it is a kind of
ruling class?
More power. Look,
it's an attitude. It's a set of ideas. How would you define it?
It is an attitude and a recognition of kinship with other like-minded people who are in the ruling class, who believe that they rule by right. That they are superior.
It's an establishment.
Morally, of course it's an establishment. Morally and intellectually, that they have a right to tell others what to do, how to live, that they know better.
And what's the source of this right in their own minds?
In their own minds, it is certainly, a greater kinship with science. The modern ruling class believe themselves to be the priests of science, who can translate. Now, mind you, they're generally scientifically illiterate, but actual knowledge of science means nothing. It is the pretense. Take, for example, global warming. It is one of the tenets that identifies the membership in the ruling class. Never have I spoken with any advocate of global warming. I'm sure there are some who actually knows anything about physics or chemistry.
Not to mention climatology.
Never mind climatology. But they assure me that their view is scientific, and that any dissent from it cannot be based on anything but the denial of science.
And so what does that mean politically? What is the political science that justifies rule in their minds?
Well, there really is no justification. The interesting thing about the American ruling class is that it does not tell its subjects, you must obey us for any political reason. You must obey us because we know better, and we really are the truest representatives of the people.
In your description, it seems like many different schools of thought about international relations, as we talk about it these days in the press and in the academy, realists, liberal internationalists, neoconservatives, and so forth, despite their differences among themselves, are all part of this group you call the ruling class.
Well, look, there are neoconservatives and liberal internationalists who are not part of the ruling class. Many would like to be, of course. but what you're alluding to is the fact that there is an establishment, and that establishment does include the major strains of thought in foreign policy.
But your objection is really not so much to the pretensions of the ruling class, if those pretensions were backed up by success in foreign policy and elsewhere.
No. It would be. Look, my democratic objection to any ruling class would stand. It is redoubled by the fact that these folks have been failures. But what really defines the ruling class is the combination of the attitude with government power. Mm-hmm. Now, there are snobs, there have always been snobs, and one can chuckle at snobbery, but one cannot chuckle at snobbery when that snobbery wields government power.
Well, you've written that the establishment, the ruling class in foreign policy, has been losing wars while winning battles for nearly a century.
Which is quite difficult to do.
Yes, it's an unusual combination, but is it true? I mean, isn't the common sense objection that we won the Cold War? I mean, we won a protracted battle of precisely of the sort that democracies are not supposed to be able to fight or fight well, and the establishment, as you define it, was in control through both political parties and different schools of foreign policy.
Exactly.
Throughout that time. So isn't that a great success in their column?
Well, it certainly looks that way, but when you look at the reality, not the realism, but the reality, you notice...
Good distinction.
You notice that the Soviet Union lost it. What actually brought down the Soviet Union was that back in 1964, Leonid Brezhnev made the mistake of telling his party first secretaries to become rooted in their districts. They became rooted in their districts. Gorbachev tried to uproot them. That didn't work, and his attempts to uproot them and to regain central control destroyed the political basis of Soviet rule.